Hello! Just a quick run through here of one particular way of doing grid alignment in Foundry. This works particularly well if you've got a map that has a decorative border around it that makes it somewhat tricky to do a pure mathematical grid alignment process. So we're going to go to Configure the Scene, and then into the Grid Configuration tool here. And I'm going to be using the arrow keys on my keyboard to adjust the grid offset position so that I can align some intersections as we go. You can choose any grid size that you like to work with, but we're not going to be using the grid size as an alignment tool here. This is going to stay put where it is, and we're going to use the background image scale as our scaling tool. The grid size can't accept decimal values, so this isn't a great way to get precise here. So with the background image scale at 1, our image is currently too large compared to the Foundry grid. It's extending past the grid in this one aligned square. So we're going to make the image scale smaller to start. You're just going to ballpark this. 0.8 is probably reasonable here. Instead of clicking commit changes and going all the way back out and then back in again, you can register your changes to these fields by just clicking anywhere in this window. When you click, it'll mess with your current view position, but you can just get yourself back with a little panning and realigning with your arrow keys. So now that we've made our first ballpark guess, we realign an intersection. Take a look at how far that got us. You can see we're closer, but now our background image is a little bit too small relative to the Foundry grid, so 0.8 kind of overshot it a bit there. We could go to 0.9 and split the difference, but I think 0.85 is probably a better guess at this point. So I'm going to change that, click somewhere in the window to make it register, fix my alignment once again with the arrow keys, and see if we're any closer. Now it looks like we've overshot it in the other direction this time. The BG image is pushing past further than the grid squares. So 0.85 is too large. Let's split the difference between 0.8 and 0.85 with maybe 0.83. Realign. And that's pretty good. When you get to about here, this will often be a place you can stop. If you go to roughly the center of your image and align your intersections right there, then by the time you get out to the edges, your grid is close enough that if you commit changes here and just turn the Foundry grid opacity all the way down, nobody's ever going to know that your Foundry grid is off by a couple of pixels. But for those that want to keep the Foundry grid on, or just need to have it perfect, we can get a little bit better than that. So if we go and split the difference a little bit more, instead of 0.83, which is a little bit too big, let's drop that down to 0.827 maybe. Again, we'll realign an intersection up in one corner, come down to another. That's a little too small. Let's go up a tiny amount to 0.828, and we'll realign while we're here down in the bottom right. And it's pretty good, and then come back up to the top left. And that's looking pretty good. You could, of course, go even further and split the difference again with a 4th decimal point, but I think that's, for me, good enough. So I hope that helps you a little bit with your grid alignment in Foundry. Happy gridding!